The House will come to order. The invocation today will be given by the Honorable Matthew Bierlein, State Representative from the 97th District. Will members, staff, and guests in the gallery please rise? Representative?
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, as the psalmists command, we come before your presence with thanksgiving and make a joyful noise unto you. For you, the Lord, are a great God and a great King above all gods. We ask that you watch over us on this day and every day as we work to represent the people of Michigan. We pray that as we are made in your image, an image of wisdom, strength, caring, and forgiveness, that we will emulate you in your deeds and actions. We ask for your wisdom in policy and its deliberation, and we pray that you grant us a servant's heart in all our actions. It is in Jesus' name that I pray and give thanks. Amen.
The clerk will open the board for the purpose of taking attendance. The board is now open. Members may check in at their desks.
I got members' attention for the purposes of a special announcement. The chair recognizes Representative Martis.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Just want to let my Democratic colleagues know there will be a Democratic caucus in the Appropriations Room on the 3rd floor. Democratic colleagues, please head to the Appropriations Room on the 3rd floor. Thank you.
Democratic members, a caucus has been called. I'd like to have members' attention for the purposes of a special announcement. The chair recognizes the Republican caucus chair, Representative Borton.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Republican members, we have a Republican caucus right now in the Republican caucus room.
Republican members, a caucus has been called. For the purposes of a very special introduction, the chair recognizes Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I'm new. It is my honor to invite and welcome 24 students and 12 adults from Hastings in the West Gallery. That
Would
way.
Representative Johnson,
There
special
we
guest,
go.
please rise. Welcome to the Michigan House of Representatives. The chair recognizes Representative Johnson.
We need to acknowledge your great name of your school, Southeastern Elementary. Thank you again for coming.
And once again, welcome to the Michigan House of Representatives.
For the purposes of a special announcement, the Speaker recognizes Minority Leader Hall.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This week marks the end of an era here in the Michigan House of Representatives as we say farewell to a faithful member of our Republican caucus staff. After more than 2.5 decades of service to this chamber and the people of Michigan, John Whetstone is headed for new opportunities. John started his tenure at the House in 1996 after reporting the news and editing stories at advanced newspapers in his home community in Genesee County, where he graduated from Grand Blanc High School before heading to Michigan State University to earn his journalism degree. His experience as a member of the media and his keen writing skills made John a valuable asset on our House Republican Communications team, and for decades, he supported the people's representatives by providing insightful advice and applying his impressive abilities to help us communicate our work to the citizens of our state. During his time in the House, John has filled a wide variety of roles as an advisor, writer, and editor, and he has helped lead our communications department as deputy director and director. He has composed and edited thousands of news releases, speeches, and message points, coordinated press conferences and events, and coached representatives to communicate effectively. John can recall fondly the days when press releases were distributed by fax, but he has also helped modernize our communications department, developing our caucus website and social media pages, and generating increased engagement with the people of Michigan. One of John's proudest accomplishments is the instrumental role he played in preparing the House's commemoration of the 60th anniversary of D-Day in June 2004. Dozens of Michigan World War II veterans, including John's grandfather, were welcomed to the House to help mark that occasion. In all, John has served in the House for a 26-year period that was nearly uninterrupted. After the 2002 elections, he left the House only to return weeks later. So John, if you miss public service at your new job, you're always welcome to take the position back in the comms office. We hear there's a vacancy opening up next week, all right? Outside of his professional writing, John is also an accomplished screenwriter in his spare time. His screenplays have come to life on film, and he has won awards and acclaim for his craftsmanship. John is also right at home in Michigan's great outdoors. He avidly enjoys fly fishing on our state's beautiful lakes, rivers, and streams. John has poured his love for the state of Michigan into his work throughout his 26 years in the Michigan House of Representatives. His dedicated public service is only outmatched by his commitment to his family. He is a loving and devoted husband to his wife, Holly, and a proud father to 2 sons, Owen and Jack. So today, we thank John Whetstone for his faithful service to the Michigan House of Representatives and the people we serve. Legislators and staff will sorely miss John's presence, media expertise, messaging savvy, and thoughtful words of encouragement and advice. John, although we're sad to see you go, we're excited for your new opportunity and wish you all the best.
Speaker recognizes Minority Leader Hall.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We have prepared this tribute here for John Whetstone to commemorate his 26 years of service to this chamber, and I'll present it to you at this time. Thank you for your service, John, and congratulations.
Thank you. If I could have the members' attention for purposes of a special introduction, the chair recognizes Representative McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Today I have 26 students, 6 adults, and parents from Bemis Elementary School here today in the West Gallery.
Would Representative McDonald's special guest please rise? And welcome to the Michigan House of Representatives. Chair recognizes Representative McDonald.
I just wanted to add a quick note that one of the things is they're coming here with an interest in voting for a Michigan state drink. They're very interested in this topic, and they're telling me about half of them want it to be Faygo, and about half of them want it to be Verner's. So everybody stand by for that fight on the floor.
Thank you. If I could have the members' attention for the purposes of introduction, the chair recognizes Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I'd like to welcome and ask my colleagues to welcome some residents and members of the United States Steelworkers Local 9899 from Saginaw County. They're here in our gallery today, Mr. Clerk.
Would Representative O'Neill's special guest please rise? And welcome to the Michigan House of Representatives. For the purposes of introduction, the chair recognizes Representative Miller.
Hello, everyone. Can I I have your attention? Could you all please welcome my Monroe County friends who came all the way here today just to support us. Let's give them a big round of applause. Thank you.
Would Representative Miller's special guest please rise and welcome to the Michigan House of Representatives. If I could have the members' attention for the purposes of a special introduction, the chair recognizes Representative Arbit.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I'd like to recognize my guest, Talia Wendrow of West Bloomfield, who just came back from arguing before the Michigan Supreme Court.
Would Representative Arbit's special guest please rise and welcome to the Michigan House of Representatives.
Speaker recognizes Minority Floor Leader Postumus.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to excuse Representatives Aragona and Bruck.
The clerk will close the board, tally, display, and announce today's attendance.
Madam Speaker, a quorum of the House is present. There are no members absent with prior excuse.
Will members, staff, and guests in the gallery please rise and join me now in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Speaker recognizes Majority Floor Leader Ayash.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to proceed to the order of motions and resolutions and take up House Resolution 5-0.
Without objection so ordered, the clerk will read.
House Resolution number 5-0, introduced by Representative Green, a resolution to declare March 2023 as Brain Injury Awareness Month in the state of Michigan.
Speaker recognizes Representative Green.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate being able to speak to this very personal issue. Declaring March 2023 as Brain Injury Awareness Month. I think as we look back over the course of our lifetime, we begin to see a real medical emergency begin to emerge and that we became more aware of. Concussions through sports, as well as different types of injuries to the organ called the brain, that whether it was in a collision, a car accident, a work injury, or even some of our military. These realities of life have created a safe haven here in Michigan. And what I mean by that is I've lived and had residency in three other states. In those 3 other states, I know of no other provider network like we have in Michigan to help individuals get through the injuries that they have had to their brains. Whether we look at concussions, we look at maybe puncture wounds to the brain and the injuries that they provide, the research and helping people grow and helping people overcome them has been concentrated here in Michigan. Then we move to the next step, the benefits that we have as Michiganders because of it. Many of you know in 2011, my mom suffered a debilitating stroke. The left side of her body is still basically paralyzed to this day. She can move around a little bit with a cane. She was admitted to the Lighthouse Brain Injury Rehab Center that had done all their research on other types of brain injuries. 3 months after being wheeled into the facility, she left walking on her own. And that was only done because of the facilities that we have here in Michigan. But I'd like to go a step farther than that. The professionals that we have in Michigan, because of our work that we have done in addressing this really cutting edge treatment for the brain, the therapists, the psychologists, the psychiatrists, the aides, the attendant care that we have has really helped restore Michiganders to a life that they can enjoy and that they can move on beyond their injury. I appreciate you allowing me to speak to the resolution. I would encourage a yes vote as we remember those with brain injuries and those providers, the brain injury of Michigan, as we remember those individuals who help our constituents. Thank you.
The question before the House is the adoption of House Resolution 50. All those in favor of the resolution will say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The resolution is adopted. Speaker recognizes Majority Floor Leader Ayash.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm going to proceed to the order of motion and resolutions and take up House Resolution 5-1.
Without objection so ordered, the clerk will read.
House Resolution number 5-1, introduced by Representative O'Neill, a resolution to declare March 2nd, 2023 as Cardiovascular Disease Awareness Day in the state of Michigan.
Speaker recognizes Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I stand here today to introduce my resolution to declare March 2nd as Cardiovascular Awareness Day in Michigan. Cardiovascular disease is the leading cause of death in the United States. It is important to know that heart disease can happen to anyone. An individual can be born with it, or it can develop with lifestyle and age. Some of these diseases and disorders are commonly known, such as heart attack, stroke, what was just mentioned by my colleague, heart failure, and arrhythmia. March 22nd marks the awareness of not only these commonly known cardiovascular diseases, but all of them. Madam Speaker, this House resolution urges expansion of Michigan's cardiovascular screening. It also urges for the update of Michigan Cardiovascular Plan to help accelerate improvements in care of patients, not only in screening, but treatment and monitoring to improve health outcomes and achievement. Madam Speaker, I urge my colleagues to join me in voting yes on this resolution for a healthier, more aware Michigan. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The question before the House is the adoption of House Resolution 51. All those in favor of the resolution will say aye. Those opposed say nay. The resolution is adopted. Speaker recognizes Majority Floor Leader Ayash.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Continuing on the order of motion resolutions, I move to take up House Resolution 5-2.
Without objection, so ordered, the clerk will read.
House Resolution number 5-2, introduced by Representative Miller. A resolution encouraged the United States federal government to increase transparency and notification standards around the transportation of toxic waste materials across state and community lines.
The resolution will be referred to the Committee on Transportation, Mobility, and Infrastructure. House will stand at ease, call the chair. For the purposes of an introduction, the Speaker recognizes Representative Young.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today I'm excited, I'm so excited to announce I have guests from Kennedy Elementary School and parts of my district from Livonia. If I could have you all welcome my guests on today. They're in the East Gallery.
Will the guests of Representative Young please rise? Welcome to the Michigan House of Representatives. House will come to order. Speaker recognizes Majority Floor Leader Ayash.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to proceed to the order of second reading of bills and take up calendar item number 3, House Bill 4006.
Without objection, so ordered, the clerk will read.
Calendar item number 3, House Bill 4006, introduced by Representative Pahutsky. A bill to amend the Michigan Penal Code, People, State of Michigan, an act.
The bill will be considered read a second time by its title. Are there amendments? There are amendments. The clerk will read.
The Committee on Judiciary, Representative Breen, Chair, recommends the adoption of substitute H1.
The question before the House is the adoption of the substitute. The clerk will open the board. The substitute is adopted. Are there further amendments? There are further amendments. The clerk will read.
Representative Bolin offers one amendment identified as Amendment 1A.
Speaker recognizes Representative Bolin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My husband has a saying, say what you mean what you say, words have meaning. This amendment lends itself to that. It will tie bar House Bill 4006 to House Bill 4103, which defines extraordinary medical procedures to mean interventions, therapies, and professional services that are not commonly rendered or recognized throughout the state's neonatal intensive care inpatient facilities as supporting premature births. Lastly, this will provide assurance for a mother that the normal standard of care for viability includes an extension of reproductive care in the NICU. I urge a yes vote on this amendment.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. The clerk will open the board. The amendment is not adopted. Are there further amendments? There are further amendments. The clerk will read.
Representative Alexander offers one amendment identified as Amendment 1B.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. The clerk will open the board. The amendment is not adopted. Are there further amendments? There are. The clerk will read.
Representative Regas offers one amendment identified as Amendment 1C.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. The clerk will open the board. The amendment is not adopted. Are there further amendments? There are further amendments. The clerk will read.
Representative Fox offers one amendment identified as Amendment 1D.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. The clerk will open the board. The amendment is not adopted. Are there further amendments? There are further amendments. The clerk will read.
Representative Green offers one amendment identified as Amendment 1E.
Speaker recognizes Representative Green.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of this tie bar amendment. Aborting a baby because they have a genetic condition such as Down syndrome or Klinefelter syndrome is appalling, and nothing less than the practice of eugenics. I am the mother of a wonderful son who was born with Klinefelter syndrome, a condition that many in the medical community would recommend have been aborted, and 60 to 70% of these boys are aborted preborn. The fact that my son has Klinefelter syndrome did not jeopardize his life, did not jeopardize my mental or my physical health, for which it would warrant the ending of his life. I urge a yes vote on this amendment and to protect those babies. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The question before the House is the adoption of this amendment. The clerk will open the board. The amendment is not adopted. Are there further amendments? There are. The clerk will read.
Representative Johnson offers one amendment identified as Amendment 1F.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. The clerk will open the board. The amendment is not adopted. Are there further amendments? There are further amendments. The clerk will read.
Representative DeSana offers one amendment identified as Amendment 1G.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. The clerk will open the board. The amendment is not adopted. Are there further amendments? There are further amendments. The clerk will read.
Representative Smith offers one amendment identified as Amendment 1H.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. The clerk will open the board. The amendment is not adopted. Are there further amendments? There are. The clerk will read.
Representative Fink offers one amendment identified as Amendment 1I.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. The clerk will open the board. The amendment is not adopted. Are there further amendments?
Okay.
There are further amendments. Are there further amendments? There are further amendments. The clerk will read.
Representative Green offers one amendment identified as 1J.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. The clerk will open the board. The amendment is not adopted. Are there further amendments? There are further amendments. The clerk will read.
Representative Roth offers one amendment identified as 1K.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. The clerk will open the board. The amendment is not adopted. Are there further amendments? There are. The clerk will read.
Representative Wenzel offers one amendment identified as Amendment 1L.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. The clerk will open the board. The amendment is not adopted. Are there further amendments? There are further amendments. The clerk will read.
Representative Leitner offers one amendment identified as Amendment 1M.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. The clerk will open the board. The amendment is not adopted. Are there further amendments? There are further amendments. The clerk will read.
Representative Hoadley offers one amendment identified as Amendment 1N.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. The clerk will open the board. The amendment is not adopted. Are there further amendments? There are further amendments. The clerk will read.
Representative Bueller offers one amendment identified as Amendment 10.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. The clerk will open the board. The amendment is not adopted. Are there further amendments? There being no further amendments, the question before the House is the advancing of the bill to the order of third reading. Hearing no objection, the bill is on third reading. Speaker recognizes Majority Floor Leader Ayash.
Madam Speaker, continuing on the order of second reading of bills, I move to take up calendar item number 5, House Bill 4032.
Without objection, so ordered. The clerk will read.
Calendar item number 5, House Bill 4032, introduced by Representative Young, a bill to amend the Code of Criminal Procedure, People of the State of Michigan, enact.
The bill will be considered read for a second time by its title. Are there amendments? There being no amendments, the question before the House is the adoption. There being no amendments, the question before the House is the advancing of the bill to the order of third reading. Hearing no objection, the bill is on third reading. Speaker recognizes Majority Floor Leader Ayash.
Madam Speaker, I move that the House proceed to the order of third reading of bills and take up calendar item number 3, House Bill 4006, and place it on immediate passage.
Without objection, so ordered. A reminder to members to remain on the House floor for the duration of the third reading of bills. The clerk will read.
Calendar item number 3, House Bill 4006, introduced by Representative Pohutsky, a bill to amend the Michigan Penal Code, People of the State of Michigan, enact.
Without objection, the bill will be considered read a third time by its title. Are there amendments? There are no amendments. The question before the House is the passage of the bill. Speaker recognizes Representative Morse.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Permission to speak to the package.
So ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, I rise today in support of House Bills 4006 and 4032. The action we are taking today recognizes that this state values the bodily autonomy of people who carry pregnancies. The bills we are repealing, enacted a mere 11 years after women achieved the right to vote, do not reflect the personal freedom to make medical and personal decisions. Bodily autonomy is critical to the idea of personal liberty. This body has carried 3 pregnancies to term. This body has experienced severe hemorrhage during childbirth. This body has recovered from a 3rd-degree tear requiring hours of post-delivery surgery. This body has carried 2 more pregnancies through miserable periods of all-day pregnancy sickness. Women still die in childbirth, and this country actually has a real poor record when it comes to maternal death. It is the people who carry pregnancies whose bodies are at risk. We get to decide whether or not to carry a pregnancy. This body has also had an abortion. Had abortion been criminalized as the 1931 law requires, my doctor and my sisters could have been prosecuted for helping me obtain an abortion. The truth is, legal abortion saved my life. Had abortion been illegal in 2011, I would probably not be here to raise my 3 babies to adulthood. What we are doing today shows that those of us who vote for it value the bodies that carry the pregnancies, which frankly, we need to have healthy babies. I urge my colleagues to vote yes on this package. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Speaker recognizes Representative DeSana.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Permission to speak to the package at large.
So ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today in defense of Michigan's 1931 statute protecting life, and specifically the life of the unborn child. My wife Stephanie and I have 8 children, 4 daughters. We have 14 grandchildren, 6 granddaughters. Their health and safety is of my utmost concern. There is nothing more precious than life itself. These bills are an unnecessary attempt to spike the ball and further denigrate the unborn child and the sanctity of life. We know with the results of the last election where the unborn child stands in Michigan. I could not remain silent today in the face of the repeal of this law that has stood for nearly 100 years, even through the last 49 years of Roe v. Wade. Under these bills, the unborn child will enjoy practically no safeguards under Michigan law. Whatever protections may have been left in place by Proposal 3 will be nullified by these new bills. There was a time, Madam Speaker, when we recognized life as an objective good, a gift to be cherished, a right to be protected. It is my hope that Michigan will once again value life in all of its stages. I urge a no vote on all of these bills. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Speaker recognizes Representative Fox.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And I rise today in order to speak toward these particular bills and the whole package, if possible.
So ordered.
So I rise as a follower of Jesus, as a husband, a father of 4, a grandfather of 12, and in case you haven't noticed, I am an old white guy. So before us today are House Bills 4006, 4031, 4032, which desire to repeal Michigan's 1931 abortion law. Those sponsoring these bills argue that this vote is simply procedural. It is believed that this law is unenforceable and unconstitutional, now that Proposal 3 has been put into the state constitution. But this is not true. The regulation of abortion after fetal viability is still permitted under the current Michigan Constitution. Even though the 1931 law does not apply to abortions up to the point of viability, Proposal 3 specifically states that the quote-unquote, the state may regulate the provision of abortion care after fetal viability, provided that in no circumstance shall the state prohibit an abortion that is medically indicated to protect the life or mental health of the pregnant individual. Many may not share my pro-life views, but common sense says that late-term abortions performed on healthy women with healthy babies are extreme and not something we want or need in Michigan. My constituents agree with this, and currently we have only one protection against these extreme late-term abortions, and that is this 1931 law. The part of this law that prevents abortions after fetal viability was enforceable under Roe and remains enforceable now. Post-viable babies have enjoyed the protection of this law. If these bills pass and this 1931 law is repealed, Proposal 3's framework allowing the state to regulate abortion after fetal viability will be meaningless because there will be no laws in place to enforce this standard. No law will exist to protect these healthy babies from abortions. Therefore, it's misleading and dangerous to claim that these bills would simply clean up the books. By taking a defunct law off the Constitution, House Bills 4006, 4031, and 4032 are just the first step to repeal common sense regulations for abortions. We have a duty to the people of Michigan to stand against this extremism. Based on God's word, I believe that taking the life of an innocent person is murder. Abortion takes the life of an innocent person. Therefore, abortion is murder. I will vote no on these bills. And members, I appeal to heaven and I urge you to join me. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Speaker recognizes Representative Morgan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Permission to speak to the entire package.
So ordered.
Madam Speaker, I rise today in support of House Bills 4006, 4031, and 4032 because abortion rights are human rights. Abortion care is health care. I'm not speaking in support of this bill because of a wife. I'm not speaking in support of this bill to support a sister or a daughter. I'm a gay man without a wife or children. but I have a stake in reproductive freedom. Because my constituents have a stake in reproductive freedom. We all do. We all deserve the right to access the health care we need to protect ourselves, to plan for our futures, to take care of our families, and to lead fulfilling lives in the state of Michigan. When women can't secure the health care they need, our society suffers, our economy suffers, our communities suffer, and our families suffer. That is why I wanted to speak out today. If the abortion ban should go back into law or even stays on the books, all of our lives could change, not just people who may become pregnant. That's why I feel so strongly about this legislation and why I'm speaking out today, because it affects all of us. And I encourage you to vote yes. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Speaker recognizes Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wish to speak to the package at large also.
So ordered.
Thank you. Today I rise in opposition to House Bill 4006 and 4032. I want to share with my colleagues, whom I'm honored to serve with, and fellow elected representatives, all of us, some things to think about before we vote on this. This is the most important vote of your entire career. This will be a historic vote and will forever be known to your children and grandchildren and future generations. It will be forever attached to your name. How will we look in the eyes of our children and grandchildren if we don't stand up for every life, especially the most helpless of all? This is truly not a partisan issue, and it never should have been. It's just about life. Aside from removing a law which has been on the books showing Michigan's commitment to the care and safety of women and their children, this bill package removes the prohibition against average Joe people advertising powders, pills, or drugs that cause abortion. In other words, MCL 750.15, which House Bill 4006 seeks to repeal, is absolutely constitutional under Proposal 3 and should remain in place to protect the public from very dangerous DIY at-home abortion or contraceptive concoctions, which is what these laws were designed to protect against. The laws do not prevent doctors from prescribing the abortion pill or FDA-approved contraception. They simply prevent unlicensed people from selling or advertising unapproved drugs for abortion or contraception in Michigan. Repealing these laws has nothing to do with Proposal 3, and instead the repeal may lead to dangerous situations causing injury or even death to the women in Michigan. We have a duty to protect the lives of our constituents, born and unborn. We know abortion takes the lives of roughly 30,000 babies per year in Michigan alone. That's 3 classrooms a day, every day. It also funds a multi-billion-dollar industry, manipulates women into thinking they have no other options instead of truly offering support and choices for women. And I can vouch for the amount of resources in this state, charities alone, that could provide and pay for every mother, every pregnancy, every baby in the entire state. We grieve over every life lost through COVID, through the MSU shooting, Oxford shootings, and all ways lives have been taken. But let's also recognize how many lives are lost in abortion. It is truly the greatest killer of children in our state and in our nation. I stand committed to protecting women and their children. Due to the amendment added into our Constitution in November, keeping these laws in the books in no way affects the option for women to have abortion. All it does is offer protections against unregulated abortions and dangerous, untested DIY abortion concoctions. I urge everyone to follow my example and vote no on House Bill 4006 and 4032. Thank you.
Speaker recognizes Representative Brixey.
Madam Speaker, may I address the entire package?
So ordered.
Madam Speaker, I rise before you here today in support of 4006 through 4032 and stand here as an American, and I'm proud to be an American. In our country, we don't record and review the books that you check out of a library. We don't censor the movies that you watch. We don't follow you into a bathroom stall to see what you're doing. And we don't imprison you because you didn't go to church, because privacy and personal freedoms are fundamental to our values. Last year, we lost those freedoms when Roe versus Wade was overturned and Michigan defaulted to an archaic abortion ban that was still on the books, despite having been unconstitutional for nearly half a century. Our medical futures were suddenly in the hands of politicians and law enforcement instead of our family doctors. People across our state, Republicans and Democrats and independents, started coming forward to share their abortion stories. Many of them had never felt the need to share before because the stories are personal and private and sometimes very painful to discuss. But they shared them because they were afraid and they were furious. They couldn't believe that after 50 years of privacy and bodily autonomy, that the government would get between them and their doctors. They wanted people like us, politicians, to try and understand the myriad of reasons people need abortions. In a nation that's always valued personal freedom, it was inconceivable that politicians were suddenly deciding how many children we should have and forcing us to endure pregnancies we didn't want. The folks who spoke up wanted to help people understand the complexity of abortion. And their courage inspired me to talk about my own abortion. I had an abortion, and my abortion is not the business of anyone in this chamber, because my right to privacy is sacred. Whether my abortion was a baby that I desperately wanted but wasn't viable, or the result of the first time my husband and I got a babysitter and went out, had a little too much to drink, had a lot of fun and not enough protection, it's not anyone's business. Whether my abortion was a miscarriage that wouldn't resolve on its own, or the result of a broken condom, it's not anyone's business. Whether my abortion was because my boyfriend didn't like my method of birth control, so we didn't use it that one time, it's not your business. Whether my abortion was because I was a teenager who got carried away by the moment and the pleasure of the moment is not your business. Whether my abortion was because I got a fantastic new job and wanted to put all my efforts into my career is not your business. Whether my abortion was because I forgot to take my birth control too many times in a month is not your business. Whether my abortion was because I already had kids that I loved, but I couldn't afford anymore, is not your business. My abortion story is everyone's abortion story. There are a million reasons why people have abortions, but every story has something in common. They're personal, they're private, and they really aren't anyone's business. We need to trust people to make the decisions that are best for themselves and their families. A politician's religious belief should not dictate my health care or anyone else's health care. The government does not belong in our bedrooms or our doctor's office. Removing the 1931 abortion ban will restore our constitutional rights to privacy and uphold the will of a vast majority of Michiganders. And it'll make our state recognizable again as a place where privacy and personal freedoms are cherished as an inherent right. I urge a yes vote on the bills.
Speaker recognizes Representative Green.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Permission to speak to the package at large.
So ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to oppose House Bill 4006 because it represents a clear and present danger to our public health. That's right. Voting against this misguided plan will ultimately protect public health. Colleagues, if you were told you could eliminate the leading cause of death in the state of Michigan with just one vote on the House floor, would you? I would. Because it's important to realize the leading cause of death in Michigan is not heart disease, it's not cancer, and it's not even COVID-19. The leading cause of death in the state of Michigan is abortion. Close to 30,000 babies lost their lives due to abortion in Michigan in 2020 alone. That's more than any other cause, including COVID, which was raging across the state in 2020. We must value and protect life. I urge a no vote on House Bill 4006 to save our children and to save our future. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Speaker recognizes Representative Reingans.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. May I speak to the whole package?
So ordered.
Thank you. I stand before you today to ensure that Michigan's laws match the will of the people of Michigan. Voting yes on these bills will make this happen. We heard loud and clear from Michigan voters just months ago that they want our laws to protect our right to make our decisions about our own bodies and health care. Let's get one thing straight. Abortion bans are about oppression and control. Abortion bans are a restriction on our basic rights to control our own bodies. I can't help but think of my own experience. I was very sick in my pregnancy, and I almost died in childbirth and the aftermath. I was so grateful that I could talk to my healthcare providers about all of the medical care I might need during that trying time. My daughter almost grew up without a mother. I can't help but think about the people across our country who can't take time off work to get the medical care they need. They can't travel to a state where the medical care they need happens to still be legal. Lives are being lost, families are being shattered, and communities are being devastated. This is what happens when we lose the most basic right of all, the right to control our own bodies. Our state could have gone in that direction, but Michigan voters said no. The people spoke loud and clear. These bills are proof that we heard them. Michiganders want us to preserve their freedoms and the most basic rights. That's what we promised, and that's what we're doing today. To the people of Michigan, your rights are safe.
Speaker recognizes Representative Smith.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wish to speak to the whole package.
So ordered.
Thank you. I rise today to implore everyone to pause and to look at what we're doing. We're removing a law designed to protect women, but what are we replacing it with? Nothing. Does the name Cree Irwin ring a bell to anyone in this chamber? It should. Cree Irwin was killed in a perfectly legal, yet horribly botched abortion right here in our state in 2016 at the hands of a Planned Parenthood abortionist in Kalamazoo, Michigan. In just over a year, Cree was a 24-year-old black woman who found herself pregnant for a second time in just over a year. And with less than a 1-year-old at home, Cree didn't feel that she could handle another child. So she sought a first trimester abortion at the local Planned Parenthood. After her abortion, Cree had severe pain and cramping and sought the help the local emergency room, only to be sent home to bleed to death internally from a perforated uterus with leftover fetal body parts inside of her. This tragic death is just one example of how abortion is not safe and it is not good for women. With the passage of Proposal 3, abortions up to the point of viability are legal. Full stop. Doctors will never be prosecuted for performing or prescribing an abortion. Period. But the repeal of the abortion statute and its criminal sentencing guideline in HB 4032 provides a get-out-of-jail-free card for abortionists who kill women in botched abortions. The language that is being repealed is as follows: felony charges of a 4-year for the performance of an abortion, and felony charges of 15 years for abortion resulting in the death of a female. It is unconscionable to remove the criminal penalties for literally killing women in abortions. How does this protect women's health? This appears to solely protect abortionists. What recourse will there be for women like Cree Irwin? This is not women-centric. This is not what voters wanted when they approved Proposal 3. For Cree, and sadly any women who we unfortunately come after, I will be voting to retain this law and will be voting on no of the repeals. I urge you all to think about how it helps women to repeal a law that is criminalizing killing a woman in an abortion. I urge a no vote on all of these bills.
Speaker recognizes Representative Fink.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. May I speak to the whole package?
So ordered.
Thank you. The repeal of our current abortion law marks another episode in the long saga of the Michigan public being lured into extreme pro-abortion measures, deceptively marketed to them as common sense protections of reproductive freedom. Eliminating the state's only means for prosecuting non-physician abortions, abortions conducted without the consent of the mother, or abortions performed by illegal means, places women in Michigan in unacceptable danger. For most of the last half-century, Roe v. Wade was understood to grant a general right to abort a baby, and until that case was overruled last year, many state statutes regulating abortion across the country were found by courts to be wholly unenforceable under Roe's framework. And during the campaign to add the provision to our Constitution that we're now told compels us to repeal our current laws, the message was that we were simply being asked to restore Roe. But one law that was never found to be wholly unenforceable under Roe was MCL 750.14. Early in the Roe era, the Michigan Supreme Court found that this act was still enforceable in cases such as those brought against non-physicians who performed abortions. Subsequent Court of Appeals cases repeatedly confirmed that there were instances of abortion during the time of Roe that MCL 750.14 still prohibited, including one as recently as 2019, wherein an abusive stepfather raped and impregnated his 16-year-old stepdaughter, and then he stepped on her stomach and her back, and then he administered abortion drugs he purchased over the internet to terminate the pregnancy and hide the crimes he had previously committed against her. Under the laws as they are today, he was subject to a 4-year penalty for illegally procuring that abortion and was in fact prosecuted and convicted by a jury for exactly doing that. In that case, in the Roe era, proceeded under the law that we're repealing today. But now we're being told that this law cannot operate under the Constitution as it's been amended. This means one of two things. Either the people were hoodwinked into adopting this constitutional amendment by being told that it was the same thing as Roe, or the claim that this law cannot be constitutionally construed now is simply wrong. This law is the only statute that allowed for the enforcement of abortion regulations under Roe v. Wade, and it remains the only law that can be used to prosecute illegal abortions, which are still regulated by the legislature under Article 1, Section 26 of our current Constitution. The implementation of this legislation without even introducing a replacement for those acts which our Constitution expressly says we may still regulate is reckless. I urge my colleagues to oppose these bills, which in no way protect women in Michigan and are advantageous only to predatory abortionists. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Speaker recognizes Representative Young.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to speak to the entire package.
So ordered.
Criminal justice reform. Criminal justice reform. That's what repealing the 1931 abortion law, criminalizing law-abiding Michiganders means to me. It means justice, plain and simple, Madam Speaker. Justice for those who made the difficult, gut-wrenching decision to obtain an abortion. Every day, Madam Speaker, every single day that we come and we do our duty in these chambers, we recite these words while covering our hearts. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That's what we say. But we can't have selective liberty because, see, people who look like me know what that looks like, selective liberty. We can't have selective justice because, once again, people who look like me, we've experienced what selective justice looks like. Liberty and justice must include everybody. That includes allowing women to make this difficult, gut-wrenching decision without government interference. You see, I ran for office to be a representative not of the one, but of the people. I could have stayed at home and rested on my own religious morals. I could have did that, and that would have been just fine. But I signed up to be a representative of the people. And on this issue, the people have spoken. On this issue, we know what the will of the people happens to be. There's no guesswork. And so when I look at this and I hear the debate, and I just want to be clear that nobody is forcing anybody to get an abortion. Nobody is forcing anybody to get an abortion. I happen to be one of those people that would not have gotten an abortion. We've heard my colleagues say, I got an abortion. We heard my colleagues say it was medically necessary. But I'm somebody by under no imagination was going to get an abortion had I been in that position. That's just the truth, colleagues. But what I will not do is allow my best friend who got raped, my best friend who at 16 got raped, who didn't know what to do, who didn't have understanding parents, to ultimately be criminalized for making the gut-wrenching, difficult decision to have an abortion. And so with that, I urge my colleagues to stand with the majority of voters in the state of Michigan and to support this legislation. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
House will go at ease. Call of the chair.
The House will come to order. Speaker recognizes Representative Pohotsky.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Last November, voters in Michigan overwhelmingly supported Proposal 3, which enshrines the right to reproductive freedom, including access to abortion, in our state's constitution. In doing so, voters rendered Michigan's draconian 1931 criminal abortion ban unconstitutional. The bill before you today removes that ban. The people of Michigan made it crystal clear that they want abortion to remain safe and accessible here. And it's incumbent upon us now to remove this outdated and unconstitutional law from the books. Some of my colleagues have questioned what the point of removing this ban is given the passage of Proposal 3. I would have assumed that the uncertainty that our state was thrown into after the Dobbs decision made that clear. But it's possible that not every office had constituents reaching out, confused about whether or not they were able to access abortion care in our state during that time. So I'd like to talk about what that looked like. On May 3rd, 2022, an opinion in the Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health case was leaked. Now, the leak did not have force of law, but because this leak was unprecedented, many patients were fearful and uncertain and avoided abortion care altogether. The official Dobbs decision came out on June 24th, overturning Roe v. Wade and removing a right to health care that people had held for nearly 50 years. States that had either new laws waiting to go into effect or snapback laws that were previously unenforceable, like Michigan, now effectively banned abortion. However, in Michigan, a temporary injunction prevented the 1931 law from going into effect, meaning that people could still receive an abortion, which is precisely what my office told those people who reached out, unsure of where their right to bodily autonomy stood. Then, on August 1st, the Court of Appeals ruled that the injunction did not apply to county prosecutors, meaning those choosing to could prosecute providers under the 1931 law. Later that day, a temporary restraining order was granted, preventing enforcement at the county level. 2 days later, that TRO was upheld. Once again, we did our best to make sure that our constituents knew what their rights were, even as they drastically changed throughout the course of a single day. On September 7th, a permanent injunction was put into place against the 1931 law, which we also did our best to communicate. I'm proud that we were able to provide clarity and direction for people who were already navigating what may have been a complicated and overwhelming decision. But we were only able to provide that clarity if people knew to ask and felt comfortable reaching out to the government to do so. I really cannot put into words how much it weighs on me to think about the number of people who had their lives' trajectories altered forever because the decision to leave this law on the books led to confusion and fear. And I choose that word, decision, very intentionally. This body had multiple opportunities to repeal this ban and made the conscious decision not to. And this was not a case of an arcane, unenforceable law being overlooked and left on the books because no one expected it to go back into effect. The goal for 49 years was exactly that, to get to a point where this law went back into effect and prevented people from accessing basic health care. So when members of this chamber ask what the motive is for repealing this ban, I implore them to ask someone who is attempting to navigate the complicated and confusing legal framework we imposed on our residents that very same question. Ask that question of someone who is in the process of exiting an abusive relationship, discovered they were pregnant, and then didn't know whether or not they would be able to terminate the pregnancy by the end of the week. Ask that question of someone who was miscarrying and opted against seeking medical care because they read horror stories of pregnant people in states like Texas being denied treatment by rightfully fearful providers. Ask that question of someone who wasn't sure they would be able to end their pregnancy in Michigan for whatever their reasoning was, because frankly, it is none of our damn business. And if none of that is compelling enough a reason, I'd ask this: what message do we want to leave for future generations? Do we want them to look back on our laws and see this draconian act still on the books when we knew we could have and should have repealed it? I wholeheartedly reject my colleagues' attempts to make this repeal anything more than what it is: removing an unconstitutional law because it is precisely what our residents have demanded of us. Our personal feelings on abortion, Proposal 3, or any other statute on the books are not relevant today. Everyone serving in this chamber was sent here with a clear task after last November, and I am grateful that we are finally addressing it and repealing this archaic and punitive law once and for all. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The House will go at ease.
The House will come to order. The question before the House is the passage of the bill. A record roll call vote is required. All those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. The clerk will open the board. The clerk will close the board. The clerk will tally, display, and announce the vote.
Madam Speaker, on the question of final passage of House Bill 4006, there are 58 aye votes and 50 nay votes.
A majority of the members elected and serving having voted therefore, the bill is passed.
Wow.
Speaker recognizes Majority Floor Leader Ayash.
Madam Speaker, I move for immediate effect.
Immediate effect is ordered. Majority Floor Leader has requested immediate effect. All those in favor, please rise. Immediate effect is ordered. Speaker recognizes Majority Floor Leader Ayash.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Continuing on the order of third reading of bills, I move take up calendar item number 5, House Bill 4032, and place it on its immediate passage.
Without objection, so ordered. The clerk will read.
Calendar number 5, House Bill 4032, introduced by Representative Young, a bill to amend the Code of Criminal Procedure. People of the State of Michigan, enact.
Without objection, the bill will be considered read for a third time by its title. Are there amendments? There being no amendments, the question before the House is the passage of the bill. A record roll call vote is required. All those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. The clerk will open the board. The clerk will close the board. The clerk will tally, display, and announce the vote.
Madam Speaker, on the question of final passage of House Bill 4032, there are 58 aye votes and 50 nay votes.
Majority of the members elected and serving having voted therefore, the bill is passed. Speaker recognizes Majority Floor Leader Ayash.
Madam Speaker, I move for immediate effect.
Majority Floor Leader has moved for immediate effect. All those in favor, please rise. Immediate effect is ordered. Speaker recognizes Majority Floor Leader Ayash.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to the order of motions and resolutions.
Without objection, so ordered. Speaker recognizes Majority Floor Leader Ayash.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that committees be given leave to meet during the balance of today's session.
Without objection, so ordered. Committees are given leave to meet. Speaker recognizes Majority Floor Leader Ayash.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just let the members know there will be no further voting when the House adjourns. It stands adjourned until Tuesday, March 7th at 1:30 p.m.
Without objection, so ordered. The House will stand at ease at the call of the chair.